the darkest parts, but he's always there. The Almighty's up to being Almighty. He's been riding shotgun, and a lot of people aren't as blessed as I am.
What if the last time you saw your favorite artist on stage was their quiet goodbye?
I want to thank the Almighty for allowing me to be here tonight. He's been riding shotgun with me for a little while.
This is the untold story of Toby Keith's final performances, the private battle he kept hidden, and the legacy he left behind. Not just in music, but in lives forever changed. From his last bow under the Las Vegas lights, to a voice that still echoes through hospital halls, this journey is more than a tribute. It's a revelation. Imagine a packed concert hall. The lights dim, and a single chord echoes through the air. For a few seconds, everything stops. There's no music, no movement, just silence and the weight of something unspoken. That moment would later become symbolic, not just of the end of a show, but of the closing chapter in the life of one of country music's most recognized voices. On February 5th, 2024, country artist Toby Keith passed away after a private battle with cancer. While the world only learned the full extent of his illness after his death, those close to him had watched a quiet but determined fight unfold behind closed doors. For over 2 years, he had been dealing with the physical and emotional toll of a serious illness, all while continuing to perform and stay connected to the fans who had followed him for decades. In mid-December 2023, Toby returned to the stage in Las Vegas for a run of shows at the Encore Theater. At the time, there was little public indication that these performances would be his last. Fans came expecting a typical Toby Keith concert: big energy, memorable songs, a good laugh, and a shared love for country music. What they got, in hindsight, was something far more powerful. He walked on stage wearing his familiar white cowboy hat, guitar slung across his chest. The crowd erupted the moment the first few notes of "Should Have Been a Cowboy" rang out. It was the song that had introduced him to the world back in the early 90s. Instantly, people were on their feet, singing along, clapping, and reliving memories from decades of his music. Despite what he was going through, Toby kept his humor intact. He cracked jokes about the weather in Las Vegas and shared personal thanks with his band members, calling them out by name: Bobby on guitar, Mike on drums, Lariat on bass, and Mark on sound. It felt like a family reunion more than a formal show. He even paused between songs to place his hat on the microphone stand, smiling in a way that seemed warm and content, but with something deeper behind it. Something perhaps only his closest loved ones truly understood. Later in the show, confetti cannons blasted over the stage as he sang "Red Solo Cup." The crowd shouted the lyrics right back at him, and he laughed, tilting his head back, clearly savoring the moment. It was more than a concert. It was an exchange between an artist and his fans, a shared appreciation that had grown over decades. Unknown to the audience, scans that very morning had shown a worrying turn in his condition. Still, he didn't bring it up. He never did. Instead, he focused on what he loved doing most: performing. Backstage, his family stood in the wings. They knew what most people didn't: that his health was fragile, that the treatment was intense, and that every performance came with physical strain. But they also knew why he was on that stage. Toby had made a choice. He wanted to give his audience something real. Not a farewell, not a public breakdown, just one more memory, one more chance to sing together. That night's set list was a journey through his entire career. He started with the old hits that made him a household name, moved into later singles like "I Like Girls That Drink Beer," and ended with an encore of "I Love This Bar." During the encore, he invited Trisha, his wife of almost 40 years, onto the stage. He set down his guitar, took her hand, and kissed her forehead gently. The crowd responded with a wave of cheers. He raised her hand like a final victory salute, sharing the spotlight in a deeply personal and public way. Few realized that it would be the last time he ever sang live. He pushed himself to complete the run of shows, even as the physical toll became harder to hide. After each performance, fans lined the halls outside the venue. Rather than leave quickly, he stopped for each one. He signed autographs, took pictures, and thanked them for coming. There were no complaints, no signs of frustration, only gratitude. By the end of the Vegas performances, many who were there described a strange sense of completeness, even without knowing the full picture. It was as if something profound had happened, but they couldn't quite name it yet. For Toby, the shows were not just work. They were purpose. They were fulfillment. A few weeks later, after his death was announced, footage and memories from those December nights spread quickly online. Fans began to connect the dots. The knowing smile, the extra-long set list, the final bow with Trisha. The farewell wasn't planned in the way most are, but it was there all the same, woven into every note, every lyric, and every goodbye hug backstage. What also came to light was how private his cancer battle had been. Back in June 2022, he had posted a brief update on social media. He let fans know he had been diagnosed with stomach cancer and was undergoing treatment. He said he needed time to recover, but hoped to see everyone again soon. At the time, the message was met with waves of support from fellow musicians and fans alike. But there were few follow-ups. Toby chose not to make his illness a constant public subject. He didn't want pity. He wanted people to remember him as strong, passionate, and present. Behind that calm exterior, however, he was undergoing chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation. Friends close to him described long stretches in and out of hospitals, sessions with specialists, and times when he was simply too tired to get out of bed. But even then, he was recording vocals, sketching song ideas, and making plans to return to the road. People who worked with him during those last couple of years shared stories of resilience. In the studio, he might need breaks, but he never skipped a session. When he felt well enough, he performed at benefit concerts or visited the Children's Cancer Center he had helped found. Even during interviews, he managed to keep things light, focusing on gratitude rather than hardship. His decision to keep the worst of it private wasn't about secrecy. It was about control. He didn't want to be defined by his diagnosis. He wanted to be remembered for his music, for his connection with fans, and for the legacy he'd built over decades. And most of all, he wanted to end his career on his own terms. Those final concerts now live on as an unplanned, unscripted farewell. They offered fans a final glimpse of an artist who never lost sight of why he started. He once said, early in his career, that if he ever had to stop, he wanted to leave the stage knowing he'd given everything he had. In December 2023, surrounded by lights, laughter, and a chorus of familiar voices, he did exactly that. His story with Trisha Lucas began long before the spotlight. They met at a county fair in Yukon, Oklahoma. He had a guitar in one hand and an easy smile. She was drawn to his energy, and when he asked her to dance and share a glass of lemonade, she said yes. That moment led to a relationship that would last 4 decades. They married on July 14, 1984, in Tulsa, inside a small Episcopal church filled with the scent of fresh lilies. It wasn't lavish, but it was full of heart. Trisha wore an elegant white gown, and Toby, ever the Oklahoma boy, chose a blue suit that matched the clear summer sky. After the ceremony, the celebration continued at a family ranch in Clinton. Guests danced under strings of lights, toasted marshmallows by a bonfire, and sang along to honky-tonk favorites. It wasn't the beginning of fame, but it was the start of a life built on shared values and simple joys. Their family life unfolded over the years with the birth and growth of their children. Trisha already had a daughter, Shelley, from a previous relationship, and Toby adopted her as his own. Crystal was born in 1987, followed by Steelen a decade later in 1997. Their home in Norman, Oklahoma became a hub of activity. It was a ranch-style house with wide-open space and a long farmhouse table where everyone gathered for breakfast. The scent of sizzling bacon, fresh coffee, and biscuits filled the kitchen in the mornings. Trisha laid out plates and poured orange juice, while Toby often read headlines or jotted down music ideas on napkins. Weekends were full of life. Backyard barbecues became a tradition. Toby smoked ribs in a custom drum smoker he had built himself, while Trisha fine-tuned her potato salad recipe with a vinegar-based dressing she swore by. The yard would fill with friends and neighbors. There was always laughter, music, and the sound of footballs being thrown, or guitars being tuned. Toby carved initials into a thick oak post in the yard, marking milestones and memories. Their children each had their own place in that rhythm. Crystal followed in his musical footsteps, often strumming a guitar on the porch or rehearsing for school talent shows. Steelen, more reserved, was the quiet observer who grew up to be deeply involved in business ventures tied to the family name. Shelley, the oldest, took on a nurturing role, especially when life grew unpredictable. Through all of this, music was always part of the background. Not just Toby's career, but as a soundtrack to their everyday lives. Family sing-alongs weren't unusual, especially around the holidays. They danced in the kitchen, played cards in the living room, and told stories late into the night. These weren't moments meant for the public. They were private, the kind that shaped a person's character far from the cameras and crowds. When Toby was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 2021, those rhythms were disrupted, but never broken. At first, he thought it was exhaustion from touring, long drives, late nights, and back-to-back performances. But the pain in his stomach grew harder to ignore. After a round of scans, the truth came out. Only his immediate family knew that night. They sat around their kitchen table, hands gripped tightly, trying to process what it meant. Toby told them it was just a bump in the road. But Trisha and the kids knew it would be more than that. From the beginning, Trisha took the lead. She helped map out a treatment plan with specialists in Oklahoma City. She kept the household running, packed bags for hospital trips, and made sure every detail was taken care of. The routine quickly changed. Medical appointments, surgery dates, managing side effects, and making sure Toby had what he needed to stay comfortable. But even in the toughest moments, they chose optimism where they could. Their home became a refuge. The guest room turned into a recovery space, filled with soft blankets, pill organizers, and carefully blended smoothies. Trisha adjusted his meals, cooked bone broths, and set reminders for medications. When his appetite returned, she made his favorites, steak and potatoes, even if just in small bites. The living room, once a casual gathering spot, became a place of quiet strength. Family photos lined the walls, and pinned next to them were handwritten song lyrics and notes from fans. Even on the hardest days, music wasn't far away. Their children became an essential part of his support system. Shelley handled logistics and helped with errands. Crystal would read aloud to him, choosing stories about wide-open skies and cowboys, stories that reminded him of his roots. Steelen, often more reserved, would play guitar softly in the hallway. His father always said music was his anchor, and the family made sure that anchor never drifted far. Despite the illness, Toby remained focused on what mattered. He worked on music, even if only for short periods. He scribbled song ideas in notebooks, recorded melodies into his phone, and listened to demos when he felt well enough. When test results showed improvement, he'd talk about going back on tour. When the results darkened again, he simply adjusted and planned for the next round of treatment. He never allowed the illness to define him. He described cancer as something he was dealing with, not something that had taken over. That mindset became a source of strength for his family. They mirrored his resilience, holding on to the life they had built and continuing their daily traditions as best they could. In public, very little was known. The 2022 social media post was honest but brief. He acknowledged the diagnosis and said he was undergoing treatment. He thanked his fans for their support and said he hoped to return to the stage soon. What he didn't share was the daily effort behind that hope. The injections, the fatigue, the hospital beds, and the endless waiting for updates. Privately, Toby kept writing, kept performing when he could, and remained a father and husband above all else. At one point, he said music had built him, not cancer. That sentiment reflected how he viewed his entire life, not as a victim of illness, but as someone who had been fortunate to live out his dreams, surrounded by people he loved. When the end came in early February 2024, it wasn't in a hospital room or alone. It was in the same living room that had seen so many Christmas mornings, birthday parties, and quiet evenings with music playing in the background. He was surrounded by his family, Trisha at his side, his children nearby, and the home filled with everything that had always grounded him. The walls held laughter, and the floor still bore the wear of years of dancing feet and visiting friends. It was a peaceful passing, the kind not everyone gets, but one that reflected the life he'd built. Rich in love, grounded in place, and never too far from a guitar. The oak post in the yard still stands, carved with their initials and decades of memory. And while Toby Keith's public life was filled with stages and awards, his private life was filled with quiet moments that gave it all meaning. In 2013, Toby and Trisha launched OK Kids Corral, a project that reflected their growing concern for children battling cancer and the families who stood by them. They had seen firsthand the struggles families faced: parents sleeping in hospital waiting rooms, children far from home, and the emotional toll that came with extended treatment. They realized that healing required more than medicine. It required comfort, stability, and compassion. The idea behind OK Kids Corral was simple but deeply impactful. Create a place that felt like home for families with children undergoing cancer treatment. Instead of sterile hallways and crowded waiting rooms, they envisioned warmth and dignity. They bought land near the Children's Hospital in Oklahoma City and began building a ranch-style facility designed to offer peace, privacy, and community. The final product was a welcoming space filled with small cottages painted in cheerful colors like sunflower yellow and sky blue. Each unit included a full kitchen, bunk beds for siblings, private bathrooms, and family living spaces. Volunteers painted murals of prairies, cowboys, and wild horses on the walls. The effect was intentional, every room designed to lift spirits. There was a communal dining area where families could share meals, a game room where children could play and forget about the tubes and treatments for a while, and a garden space where parents could sit in silence or talk quietly with others going through the same experience. And most importantly, everything was free of charge. Families staying at OK Kids Corral paid nothing. The idea was to remove as many barriers as possible. Whether they were from across the state or the next town over, everyone was treated with the same level of care. It became a haven in the middle of fear and uncertainty. The same year the corral opened, Toby and Trisha established the Toby Keith Foundation. Its goal was to support families facing pediatric cancer through services, funding, and awareness. The foundation began organizing annual benefit concerts in cities like Tulsa and Nashville. These events drew big names: Sheryl Crow, Luke Bryan, John Party, and others all donated their time to raise money for the cause. At these concerts, guitars autographed by artists like Miranda Lambert, Garth Brooks, and Willie Nelson were auctioned off, sometimes for tens of thousands of dollars. Proceeds went directly to the foundation. They helped fund travel to specialist hospitals, hotel stays during long treatments, and uncovered medical costs not paid for by insurance. Trisha took on a hands-on role. She wasn't just a figurehead. She led board meetings, hired staff, and sat face-to-face with families, listening to their stories. She worked with social workers and nurses to better understand what each family needed. She even helped tutor siblings of patients, set up holiday celebrations, and arranged childcare so parents could attend treatment sessions without worrying. She also managed partnerships that expanded the foundation's reach. She worked with airlines to provide flight vouchers for distant families, built relationships with universities to recruit student volunteers, and led efforts to provide comfort kits for children, bags filled with blankets, books, music players, and small toys. Toby's role in all of this was personal. He often visited the corral himself, usually without media or fanfare. He'd walk in with jeans, boots, and a guitar. He'd sit down in the courtyard and play songs like "Beer for My Horses" or "American Soldier," inviting kids to sing along. He posed for photos, autographed hats, and told stories. For the families, those moments became treasured memories. He recorded short videos for kids too ill to attend in person, often signing off with lines like, "Keep fighting. I'll see you on stage someday." That kind of encouragement, simple, direct, and sincere, carried weight for people who needed every bit of hope they could find. By 2023, OK Kids Corral had welcomed more than 5,000 families. The foundation expanded its services to Tulsa and introduced a mobile unit, a van that delivered care kits to rural hospitals across Oklahoma. These kits contained everything from art supplies to small media devices, with music and audiobooks, to help children feel less alone during treatments. The foundation also created a scholarship fund for the siblings of young patients. Many of them had put their lives on hold or changed school plans during a brother or sister's treatment. The scholarships were designed to support those sacrifices, giving young people a chance to move forward even in the aftermath of loss or hardship. As Toby's own health declined, the same community he had built through the foundation turned back toward him and his family. Volunteers delivered meals to their home, helped with childcare for Crystal's young daughters, and ran errands when Tricia was too busy caring for her husband to leave the house. Some even offered to take on additional duties at the corral, so she wouldn't have to choose between the foundation and her family. That sense of shared mission became more powerful than ever after his passing. Tricia stepped up again, determined to continue the work they had started together. She wore his denim jacket to board meetings. She greeted every new family as if they were old friends. She led tours of the facility, gave speeches at fundraising galas, and took the stage during benefit concerts. Her message remained consistent. The mission didn't die with Toby. It only grew stronger. At every event, she repeated a phrase that became something of a signature. "He would have tipped his hat to you." It wasn't just a sentimental line. It represented Toby's way of life, humble, generous, and driven by gratitude. Following his death, tributes began pouring in from fans, not only in music but in support of the foundation. Bars in Texas and Oklahoma hosted Toby Nights, with proceeds going to OK Kids Corral. Churches held prayer services. School bake sales, social media fundraisers, and tribute concerts spread across the country. Within the first week alone, over $2 million in donations poured in. It wasn't just about mourning a celebrity. It was about honoring the man he was, the work he did quietly, and the difference he made in the lives of families who often felt forgotten. His songs may have introduced him to the world, but his work through OK Kids Corral revealed a deeper purpose. Today, the corral stands as a living tribute. Its walls echo with laughter and music, not fear. Children chase each other down hallways, parents sip coffee on porches, and volunteers hand out blankets and toys with gentle smiles. There are memory walls, gardens, art rooms, and game spaces, all shaped by Toby's belief that every child should have a chance to feel safe, loved, and strong. As tributes to Toby Keith continued to pour in from around the world, there was still one final chapter to be written, one that brought together his legacy, his family, and the entire country music community in a way that felt deeply personal and profoundly historic. Though his physical presence had left the stage, his impact remained, rippling through every song, every memory, and every fan still singing along. On the morning of February 6, 2024, just one day after his passing, news began to spread across the country music world. Toby Keith had been elected to the Country Music Hall of Fame. He would be inducted as part of the modern era class of 2024, alongside other legends including Reba McEntire, Randy Travis, Mary Chapin Carpenter, and the Oak Ridge Boys. For many, the announcement brought both pride and sadness. It was the ultimate honor, one he had more than earned, but he wouldn't be there in person to receive it. The official press release from the Country Music Association recognized his decades of contributions, not just his 26 #1 hits or his best-selling albums, but his relentless work ethic, his stadium tours, and his dedication to family and philanthropy. It acknowledged the courage he showed in his final years, continuing to perform while undergoing treatment, and it stated clearly, he belongs here now and forever. Fans reacted instantly. Social media exploded with messages of support and remembrance. Hashtags like #TobyKeith, #HOFF, and #ModernEra2024 began trending. People shared photos. Toby at the Grand Ole Opry, Toby visiting children at OK Kids Corral, Toby on stage under bright lights with his guitar slung low. The comments came quickly. Long overdue, well-deserved, and a legend finally honored. As the Hall of Fame induction ceremony approached, More details emerged. The event would take place on October 20th, 2024, at the CMA Theater in Nashville. Tickets sold out in a matter of days. Fans from across the country made plans to attend, booking flights and hotels, and sharing outfit ideas online. Denim jackets, bolo ties, and cowboy hats in honor of the man who had made that style iconic. The Hall of Fame committee reached out to Toby's wife, Trisha, inviting her to accept the honor on his behalf. They also extended invitations to his children, asking Shelley and Steelan to speak. Artists who had been influenced by Toby were asked to perform in tribute, including Eric Church, Miranda Lambert, and Florida Georgia Line. CMT was brought in to produce a special documentary segment to be shown during the ceremony. In the weeks leading up to the event, country radio stations across the United States ran tribute blocks of his music. Fans called in to share their memories. A soldier who carried Toby's album overseas, a teacher who played his songs during tough days, a single mom who said his lyrics helped her through heartbreak. Home videos began circulating online, showing moments rarely seen by the public. Toby barefoot on the porch teaching Crystal guitar chords, Trisha surprising him with a new pickup truck, and the family dancing under Christmas lights strung across their Oklahoma yard. CMT aired a special in the days before the ceremony titled Toby Keith, in memoriam. It included interviews with Brooks and Dunn, Carrie Underwood, and Sammy Hagar. They spoke about the time they spent on the road with Toby, his generosity behind the scenes, and the creative risks he never shied away from. One clip showed a young Toby backstage before a show, saying simply, "I just want to make people feel something." When October 20th finally arrived, the atmosphere in Nashville felt electric. The air was crisp with autumn wind, and the CMA Theater was buzzing with energy. Outside, the red carpet was rolled out under bistro lights. Reporters from major outlets like Billboard, People, and Rolling Stone lined up for interviews. Fans gathered at the entrance, holding signs, photos, and wearing memorabilia from past tours. Trisha arrived in a sapphire blue dress and Toby's favorite belt buckle. Crystal wore a pearl-accented blouse, and Steelan tipped his dad's iconic white hat as he walked past photographers. Inside, the theater was packed with stars: Dolly Parton, Garth Brooks, Luke Combs, Kelsey Ballerini, and more. Everyone was there for the same reason: to celebrate a man who had shaped their industry, their playlists, and their lives. The stage was intentionally simple: just a single stool, a microphone stand, and a spotlight. Portraits of Toby lined the walls. Him performing in stadiums, him smiling at OK Kids Corral, and one of him as a wide-eyed newcomer holding a guitar that looked almost too big for him. Little Big Town opened the night with a rendition of I Wanna Talk About Me, their harmonies perfectly capturing the humor and energy of one of Toby's early hits. A tribute video followed, showing his journey from local gigs in Oklahoma to global tours and charitable projects. It drew applause, laughter, and more than a few tears. Then Trisha's name was called. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. She paused for a moment at the microphone, looking out over the crowd before she began to speak. What followed wasn't just a speech. It was a message, a tribute, a conversation from one heart to thousands of others. She spoke about meeting Toby at that county fair in Yukon, about his belief in music that spoke to working people, to soldiers far from home, and to the everyday dreamer. She spoke about his stubbornness, his kindness, and his determination to keep going even when it hurt. She shared memories from home: their kids chasing footballs in the yard, their late-night talks, the mornings when he'd wake up humming a new tune before the coffee had even brewed. Then she spoke of the mission they'd built together, OK Kids Corral, and the thousands of families it had helped. She thanked the donors, the fans, the artists, and the volunteers who had kept it all going. Her voice cracked only once when she said, "He never heard this news, but tonight is for him." She ended by saying, "Toby, I don't know if you can see me now, but I know you'd tip your hat and say, 'Well done, sweetheart. I love you, and I accept this honor for both of us.'" A long silence followed. Then the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted for minutes. There were tears, but also smiles. That moment felt less like a goodbye and more like a continuation. A torch passed from one generation to the next. After the formal ceremony, people gathered outside under a canopy of lights. A candlelight vigil formed in front of the Hall of Fame. Fans sang together, starting with "Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue." Strangers held hands, shared memories, and lit candles. The glow of their flames reflected on tearful faces and grateful hearts. Even as the official tribute ended, the spirit of what Toby had built lived on. At OK Kids Corral, new families continued to arrive. In homes across America, his songs played on radios and in living rooms. And on Broadway in Nashville, street musicians strummed his greatest hits as people paused to sing along. Trisha, Shelley, Crystal, and Steelen returned to the corral not long after the ceremony. They toured each cottage, stopping to read handwritten notes pinned to the doors. Messages like, "Your dad gave us hope," and "Thank you for saving our family," covered the walls. In the garden, they planted a young oak tree in his name. Its first leaves were just beginning to unfurl. For the Keith family, for his fans, and for the country music community, Toby's induction into the Hall of Fame wasn't just a career milestone. It was a confirmation of a life lived fully, of a legacy that extended beyond music charts, and of a man who never stopped giving, even when he had every reason to slow down. His journey may have ended, but the echoes remain. In the music, in the laughter at OK Kids Corral, in the thousands of voices still singing his songs across the world, and most of all, in the love he left behind, quiet, powerful, and enduring.